How's it going, Tracy? Had to get off mute there.
Good.
It's
Good
good.
to see you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to see you
Or good
too.
to chat with you. I can't see you.
Yeah, no, I didn't turn my camera on. Maybe I'll do that. I'm in the office today. There we go.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Thank you for joining us for our second chapter meeting, at least for this year. We've got a great agenda today. We've got some folks that are going to talk to us and give us some insight on certification. So we'll get started with intros because I think we have a few new individuals joining us today. So wanted to introduce ourselves as far as the chapter leaders and organizers. And then we're going to turn it over to the panelists. So we're going to turn it over to our individuals that are either certified or involved with the certification process at UiPath. And then we will cover some upcoming events, which are additional opportunities for learning and training. And then it will be some questions for the chapter. So we took your feedback from the last session and we incorporated it into this one. So one of the highest subjects that we received feedback on, or as far as individuals wanting to have this topic covered, is on certifications and training. And so that's what we're going to cover today. So as far as the chapter leaders, you have myself and Tracy. Tracy is also going to be one of the panelists on today's call. She is certified and has, I believe, gone through probably multiple certifications. So
I have.
she is qualified to give some insight on this subject. I work as a independent consultant. I've worked with UiPath for many, many years and have a number of clients using this tool. So looking forward to listening in on this conversation today. And Tracy is a three-time MVP. So she is not only certified, but also an MVP. And then we've got Janssen, Rob, and Diana. They help us keep organized. Janssen and Rob are with Centric Consulting, and Diana is the community marketing manager for UiPath and keeps us on track and makes sure we're having these meetings on a regular basis. And I will let our panelists introduce themselves. We have Thomas joining us from the Netherlands, so he's graciously staying up late today to participate in this call, which we really appreciate. We have Christina from UiPath. She'll be walking through the resources available and already mentioned Tracy. So Thomas, would you do us the honor of introducing yourself to the group, please?
Yeah, thanks so much, Courtney. So my name is Thomas Janssen. I'm joining from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And the last 5 years, I've been spreading the gospel of RPA through Europe. So I've been working from Athens, from Amsterdam, Zurich, Brussels, all supporting great RPA projects there. And this year nominated for UiPath MVP. I also have my own YouTube channel, which is called Tom's Tech Academy. So that's me, and really a pleasure to be here today with you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Appreciate it. Tracy, let's go ahead with you next, and then we can have Christina go after that.
Sure. So I am a part of the hosting team here, where we're putting on these monthly meetings for you guys, and have been an MVP with UiPath for the last 3 years, which just means I really love to talk about automation and to help individuals and companies spend more time doing things that matter. And I've been certified with the old system and now the newer certification. So here to give insight on that topic.
And hi, everyone. I'm Christina Calden. I've been at UiPath for more than 4 years now. I started as an RPA developer and then switched over to our learning team. So I work specifically with universities and high schools, but I also sit on our certification team for the exam development. So I'll allow definitely Thomas and Tracy and anybody else who's gone through it as a user speak more to it, but I will showcase a lot of the different platforms that we have and resources available to you. And if you guys have questions, feel free to come off mute, type in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer too.
Thanks, Christina. All right, so our first polling question, hopefully you were able to log into menti.com, and if not, you can go ahead and do that now, and we're going to go ahead and vote. And so if you could let us know if you're currently UiPath certified. Tracy, should that be updating?
Yeah, it should be. I can see it in the preview, so I'm going to refresh the page.
Okay.
So suspenseful.
There we go.
Okay. So it looks like we've got a majority are not certified. So looking to learn about certification today, and a little bit less than half are. And so I'm sure, you'll have plenty of things to learn from this, as well as even if you've been certified in the past, there's new certifications and updated certifications out there. So additional resources will be shared for you. So great. And what would you like to take away from today's discussion? So if there's anything specific, other than specific exam questions, we cannot provide any answers. But if there's anything that you're looking to drill into, let us know and we'll try to cover it as best we can. So it looks like we've got some common things here about studying and where to find practice questions. What can you do with those certifications? That's a good one. Give it just another couple of seconds. How do you qualify to be certified?
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys, for voting on that. All right, Christina, we can turn it over to you, I think, to share the resources and walk us through what's available.
Definitely. And if I miss anything that was asked at the end too in there, definitely let me know. It's not letting me share screen. Oh, sorry. We can go through the slides first. Apologies. Yeah, so just wanting to say a little high level, and then I'll share the resources on my screen. But what we have now is called the UiPath Certified Professional, or UCP program. It is different if you've been around UiPath long enough to know about our kind of old just UiPath certification program. This one is more industry recognized, highly credible, and high stakes. What that means is the one that we had previously, it was just hosted through our Acme website that a lot of the Academy exercises are hosted on. This one is actually hosted through Pearson VUE. We have a web patrol that's checking that nobody is releasing the questions in any language online. There's no way that people can kind of steal them or cheat on the exam Also through Pearson VUE, you can either take it in a testing center or online. So they're checking that people are who they say they are and different things like that, that there's no real cheating. It just makes it that our customers, our partners, people hiring with this credential really trust it more so than they did before. So just kind of like as some general numbers, we had more than 20,000 people certified in our old program, and now we only have about 4,000 people passing in this program. And that's one, a lot of them weren't really certified. And two, it's just the availability and how different this one is in terms of the content that it covers and the high stakesness of it. So I'll go through some of that and how you can find what's actually covered. But it is very different because it's not you building out something in studio like the other one was. So overall, we kind of created this program because the demand for RPA professionals is growing significantly. I think it's more than 100% since this slide was made. We also see an increase in employability, marketability, and recognition. This, when I say students anywhere here, is university students, people in their current roles, people who want to completely reskill themselves and come into RPA. We do have our design and development course, which is aligned to the associate certification. I will also show the academy ways of going throughout this. The course that it's mentioning right there, RPA design and development, this is actually on Coursera. And then our academy has the learning paths too. So if you prefer, you can have that step-by-step self-led in academy. And then we say that as long as you have a technical or semi-technical background, these are the people that we target. You can come out of this not knowing anything. I've seen a lot of people who are not technical, who went through, let's say, a business degree or even a nutrition degree back even 10 years ago, who have completely done this. But it's definitely way easier if you have some sort of logic or coding, some sort of, technical skills and background. And then by having the certification, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go directly into a job. It just helps reduce the time, because even at UiPath, we really look at that as it's not necessarily required to be an RPA developer, but it does make it that your resume goes to the top. It does kind of help weed out people that they've done it and it's credible. They will still want to see maybe a portfolio or some experience or some way to see that you have built things in studio and what you can showcase and speak to as well in general. And then enjoy just like the faster career growth, just because it is also searchable. So when you're on LinkedIn or other things, you can search for people with this credential. So it does make you more marketable and easier to find you if people are looking for these skills. And then just, again, like increasing efficiency and the confidence to just say, hey, I did pass this exam. I do have these certain skills. I did meet this minimum qualified candidate way of passing.
And you do have one question. Did you want to go ahead, Thomas?
Yeah, that's me. Thank you. Yeah, so the 4K that you mentioned, right? You mentioned that you guys went from 20K to 4K certifications. Is that like the total amount of certifications, or the graduation base per year?
Oh, that's like the total amount of people who are currently certified. It's a little over 4K right now in both of our exams. And that is just total. In attempts, it's more than double that. So that's kind of what we're seeing too, is people who attempt the exam versus the pass rate. We do keep a really good eye on that. We do try to level the exams so that they're not super hard and they're not super easy. But we are seeing that people who go through, we even give you a breakdown when you finish of the percentages of each section. So for example, like what's covered, it's, let's say, a UiPath overview, selectors, data manipulation, you get your percentage by category. So maybe you're really, really good at overview and you understand the overview of studio or the products, but you're really lacking in selectors. It would kind of teach you, okay, let's go back and maybe take that course or do some exercises involving selectors instead of just using a different type of automation.
Was the pass rate similar in the old style?
No, the pass rate was almost 100% in the old style. So that's where we were seeing it, is that all of the answers were actually on GitHub for the old one. It's a main reason why we had to make this certification, was that so many people were putting it on their profile. People were hiring them and just saying, we don't even want to look at this. And we really wanted people that had the certification or being able to say it, because you will also see we're building this out so that it's better understood across the entire community. But right now in Academy, you get certificates or diplomas. That's just completing a training. Anyone can do it by clicking through and doing those quizzes on Academy, the certification is an actual exam. It's a credential. It's badged. It's things like that. So it's much more difficult than just going through and doing it. You're actually being tested, and I'll let anybody who's gone through it speak to it. But I do think that you can't just do it if you haven't gotten hands-on experience. It's not something that's completely memorization. So I'll keep the chat open.
I would tend to
Do we
agree
have
with
another slide?
It was definitely much tougher. The first was more about being able to build an automation in a certain time frame, which I'd never even thought to go look at online sites or whatever for it. But you definitely have to think through the questions. In my experience, it wouldn't be something that you memorize. You have to have some level of experience.
Yeah. And then there's a few journeys. I'll also send some web pages that link directly to this because the thing on the left that mentions UiPath Academy is open to everyone. The things on the right are uploaded into Coursera or specifically taught at universities. So it's courses that we package for universities. But you can either take the UiPath Academy, which is the associate learning plan, which I will send in a link in a little bit after I show what it is. Once you complete trainings for either one, though, through the Academy, we do recommend hands-on experience. For the associate, it's really just building stuff out in studio, so unattended, attended, kind of creating a proof of concept, maybe for a company or for something for yourself. Taking the practice tests, and I will say this again because I do think it's really important. Each practice test, one for the associate and one for the advanced, they're the same questions every single time. So it's basically just a different version of the exam. When you go into Pearson VUE, there's a bunch of different test forms with different questions. The practice test is the exact same thing as what you're going to go get in Pearson VUE. It's just test form 6 or something. The only thing is you're always getting the same questions. So don't take it until you're ready, because a lot of people, the first time they take it, maybe we'll get a 40%. They take it again and they pass and they think they're ready, but your brain remembered a lot of what you saw the first time. So it's a lot better to study, feel like you're prepared, and then but when you feel I'm ready to schedule my exam, let me take the practice test first. If you pass that, you're very, very likely to pass the actual exam. And that's for both of them. The only thing is with the advanced, it is using the RE framework. We really don't think that people can pass it unless they've had a lot of experience with the RE framework or in studio in general and development. So we do say that the hands-on experience should be building out processes for about 3 to 6 months, especially if it can be in a role as an RPA developer or some sort of role in the COE where you can shadow or get experience of what actual developers use the robotic enterprise framework for. Right. And then I think there's no other slides. If so, I can share my screen and go through it.
Yep, just that one.
Okay, great. So these are some of the things that you guys probably already know about. Through our academy, we have all our free trainings. Through the forum, we have that kind of gamified systems where you can ask questions, answer questions, get feedback. Our marketplace has the different connectors, and then the communities where you can find meetups like you are here.
All right. And should I stop sharing for you to share your screen?
Yeah, I think it won't let me if not. Okay. Perfect. So what I have up here, and I will start sharing the links as I say them in the chat. This is just our general UiPath certification page. It has a lot of information. So you can schedule the exam. You can watch some videos about why you should want to do it. What it also has is kind of the track. You do not have to go through the associate to go through the advanced, but it is part of it. So if you wanted to, you can get both of those credentials as a developer. The associate exam is kind of open for everyone. So we say that people who are RPA managers, business analysts, obviously developers, and kind of any role that has some sort of management around RPA, the associate is a good fit, but it does involve some experience in studio. There are documents, crazy amounts of documents linked here too that go through who it's targeted as. We do for each exam and really, really in-depth job task analysis, a JTA is what it's called, that goes through who are current RPA developers inside and outside the company? What is the knowledge that you would require to be an associate developer? And then have them develop different objectives to meet and to test on, and then build the questions outside of that. So for both of them, we kind of have, so for the associate, like I said, a lot of different people. So around RPA development, architects, solution architects, all these different roles may and should have some experience using RPA or using Studio and development. But the advanced developer is really for more technical specific roles. You wouldn't really be able to understand it or even use these skills unless you were going to be an RPA developer, solution architect, something really technical in the RPA team. Again, there's more videos. I think this is the really, really important part, that it involves almost all the links that you could use. The first is to select an exam. So do you want to take the associate or do you want to take the advanced? Like I said, you may take both. That's totally fine. But there are details based on either. Every year, we've been updating them on June 30th to the long-term support version. So they were just updated on June 30th to the 2021.10 version. Really, there's not many differences. The main thing is that we will release a really big release when we flip over to modern. So it's still in classic UI automation. But again, like Academy goes through this, the details are all here in what is exactly covered. Even if we're using Studio, we're not using Studio X. And then what aspects of Orchestrator you need to know. So for the most part, it's mainly just assets and queues, because every organization, and like I said, every RPA developer, what should they have knowledge about? Not necessarily in different organizations. Some developers never touch Orchestrator. Other developers are in it every single day and kind of managing from Orchestrator. So we just kind of wanted to get the base knowledge that everyone should know for the different products. In the learning, this will link to another one that I'll show, but it is the training tracks in Academy and then what's suggested beyond that. So after you go through the trainings, what kind of exercises we would recommend. The practice, these are those practice exams. Like I said, it is the same pool of questions. We just kind of generate a bunch of different exams. So depending on how many times you go into Pearson VUE, you're probably going to get a different one. And then the practice test is just an extra version. So you are getting the same amount of questions per section. You are getting the same amount of quality of the questions, things like that. To take the exam, and I will ask Tracy to comment on this, it's hosted through Pearson VUE, but there are two ways to do it. One is through a testing center, and there's thousands of testing centers across the globe. And the other is called OnVUE. It is a online version, so you can do it remotely. And Tracy, I know you did yours on VUE. I don't know if anyone has done it in a testing center and would like to speak to it.
Thomas, did you do in person or online?
Yeah, I did it in a testing center close to my house, and I can really vouch there are so many testing centers everywhere. Yeah, it's always good. It's always I like the experience of going to a testing center just because it feels a bit more real. But maybe that's just me. But yeah, it was a really good experience.
And I did the online version. My scheduled time was like 10 o'clock at night. So there's it probably more liberal than what I would guess the in-person would be. I did have a technical hiccup that day and actually had to reschedule it in the future. I couldn't reschedule it that same day. So I imagine in person you wouldn't have to worry about those types of issues. But you do have the freedom to be able to do it on Sundays and late at night and that type of thing.
Great. Yeah, so if you guys have questions, I may defer to Thomas and Tracy for the experience with that. But Pearson VUE 2, one thing I want to say is if you do have issues with them, don't repay and reschedule right away. Definitely reach out to us at certification@uipath.com. And if Pearson VUE gives you a contact to them as well, and we'll expedite it so that you're not paying 2 times. Coming back to that, for the associate exam, it is $150 per attempt and 90 minutes long, so an hour and a half. The RPA Advanced is $200 per attempt and 200 minutes long, or sorry, 120 minutes long, which is 2 hours long. I would recommend using the entire allotted time, to be honest. A lot of people who come back to us and they failed by one question, they just misread it. They are written by specific people who are very, very English oriented. and we do translate them. We also have them in Japanese. We are going to localize in other ones. But for example, we really, really try. I don't think any question has like the word not in it, trying to avoid the double negatives, trying to avoid the confusion. But the way that we word things, as everybody knows, is like process, robot, things like that. You do need to understand what we're actually talking about. So reading is really important and taking your time to go through. You can also flag and go back to questions. So if you're ever confused or want to see that again, it's important. One other thing that I will mention, it may not apply to you, but in case you want to share it with other people in your organization or peer group, we have 50% off for anyone with a student or faculty ID. So if you have anybody that you know who is going to continuing education at a school or university, any students that are currently part of it in high school, college, or beyond, same with any faculty. So if you know that anyone who works as a teacher, professor, educator, and they have an ID, we can provide a 50% off voucher for the exams. And then if your organization wants to certify a bunch of people, we have 10% off for any order of more than 100, and they just have to be used within a year. So, or scheduled within a year. So those are kind of just little things to know about if you wanted to know the behind the scenes for the money. Finally, once you pass, there is a way to manage the certifications. You get a badge and a diploma or a certificate. I did pull mine up so you can see what it looks like. One thing that I will mention is I'm currently on the team that we're going to actually start creating digital badges for Academy and for experiences and things like that. So we will have more badges for things. So the certification will always be like the kind of sought after, really, really high credential. But we do want to start creating more digital badges so that we can share and create more of a community and recognize you for things, not just for the certification. This would just be a higher tier thing, obviously. So what it looks like through CertMetrics, you do get access to this within 5 business days after you pass. It will say your active certifications. If you were active in the legacy exam, that did expire, and you should have got an email telling you that that expired June 30th of last year. And then the current ones, they don't ever expire. It may change. The only thing that we would do is we would change it in a year or two to say, we want you to get recertified. And if you've ever been in our products, you know that they change pretty quickly. So that's the main thing. It might not technically expire, but we would recommend that you with that, you will get like a PDF certificate of your actually certification. One of the things that happens in Academy a lot, and this is more specific to different regions, but people will replace the name. With these certifications, they can't, because if you look up this ID or the verification code on the CertMetrics website, it will pull up that this code is related to my name. So people don't necessarily have to come to us and say, did this person actually have an Academy account and create this? Which most of the time, if they're lying, it wasn't. It will actually have a way that you can search it. You can see when it was issued and when it expires, if it ever did. You also have the badges. These are shareable. It wants me to log back in. Oh no. This is mine. The badges you can actually share on LinkedIn. So that's the way that you can make them searchable. Once you click on it, you can share it on a lot of your different profiles. You can also make a link to it so that this comes up. So 169 people have actually clicked on my badge or viewed it. And this is a way that they can also verify that it was issued specifically to me. This is double checking that code as well. So I will start going through a lot of the other ones. I do want to also mention one other thing, because I did mention the student discount. We do have a partner with the GI Bill for the U.S. military. So if you guys fall under that, we are also working with different states to try to get RPA as like a certified skill that you could then apply certain credits to with different government programs. If you want us to look into a specific one, definitely recommend it to us, because the states normally have a lot of things that we have to go through in terms of verification. There were questions. I will start going through some other things, but feel free to cut me off if you do have any specific questions or want any of these specific links that I'm not sharing. Other than that, the way to kind of go through the training, again, this was all linked from that homepage that I shared first. But on our Academy, if you guys have normally been here, you've probably always gone to the courses page. The courses now, we have more than 100, so sometimes it's overwhelming where to start. If you have never started in Academy, I definitely recommend checking out the Learning by Roles. The roles are, you can see a lot of different ones. We have RPA Developer like we always have, and Advanced RPA Developer like we always have. We now also have Citizen Developers, which is a great place to start if you've never gotten started learning, but that is Studio X oriented. We also have process mining and beyond. If you ever want to know what it takes to be part of these roles, if you go to the resources tab, you can actually go to the course catalog. The course catalog has all the roles defined, kind of who they target. It's going to open in a second. But once you learn about the role, if it's of interest to you, these learning plans are just kind of curated courses that were from the course tab relating to this role and issued in a great order for you to go through so that it makes sense. You can still take them out of order. That's completely fine. But it does help you go through. Everything in Academy does hold your place. So if you want to come back later, you don't have a full 1 hour and 45 minutes to go through this course. You can spend 15 minutes. Whatever you go through, it'll bring you back up. Sorry, this opened on my other screen. This is that resource course catalog. I do like to send this to people if they've never heard of the different roles within the COE. And kind of what we have is these are the ones we're defining. And then the certain ones that have the learning plans above them are the ones that have already been generated. We are working on creating more learning plans for each role. And then for each role, there are, if you scroll down further, there are course information. And apologies, I went through this. The courses for business users and citizen developers, it'll kind of list them all. Role-based learning will then go into who are the profiles of these roles, kind of what do they do. We are planning on building out a web page that kind of says this. Salesforce does it really well, and we want to mimic that. That you can kind of see the learning journey and which roles then align to the certifications, about how many hours it should take. I do want to say, I think that's minimum because I recommend everyone as they go through the courses to actually build out the exercises. And so there's a lot of wiggle room there depending on your background. But this course catalog is super helpful and really does align to the learning by role. Other than that, this is less than a year old, the certification tab within Academy, but they did do a learning plan specifically for each of the certification exams. So instead of it just being the RPA Developer Foundation and Advanced, there's a few extra that also tag on, like if I go to the curriculum at the bottom, it's going to say some experience, recommended hands-on experience. It gives you a few little things that it proposes for you to do, but these are the same courses in Academy that you can learn. It is a few extra hours, also from the certification tab, and I did share this link in the chat. You can schedule the exam. You can also access the practice test. If you scroll down, it is the advanced one. Those are the only 2 exams that we currently have, and then the videos that you saw on the main page as well. For each of them, there are actually the description documents. And the description documents are where I was saying it kind of outlines every single thing. It's a little too detailed for me, but who it's targeting, so the target audience of the roles, what a minimum qualified candidate looks like. So this also is what a lot of the employers are looking for. So if they want to hire somebody with this amount of experience or with this role title, which one does this align to? Which products it's going to cover. So like I said, they were all updated to 2021.10 on June 30th. And then these are the sections or objectives that I was saying at the end. It breaks down into the percentages that you scored. The exam topics, it kind of just goes more detail into each of these. So what it's actually covering, how much knowledge or each individual question would be mapped to. And then finally, the training options. So these are all updated with the Academy. These are no cost. If you're part of the Academic Alliance, so the universities and stuff that are teaching, what course it would be called there. And then a few of them are uploaded on Coursera. We do also say that it's totally fine if you don't want to go through the formal training options. If you have been an RPA developer for a while, just make sure you're going through the objectives and the things that are being tested on. And if you feel solid on all of those different things, like you really understand selectors, you've worked with all the different data manipulation types recently, things like that. You can go ahead and just attempt the practice test and see where you're at. If you pass that, like I said, you're probably good to go. Finally, it's just the high-level overview of how they're actually graded. So for both exams, it's a 70% is the passing score. And like I said, they have different time durations and different fees. So just checking that. Again, all of this is on the website for each one as well. And when you go to schedule it, you can pay just by credit card if you need an invoice. They have that option. If you can't find any of this, you can always reach out to certification@uipath.com. Lastly, these are the 2 practice tests. So somebody asked that. I'm going to post the associate one first in the chat. So I'm going to write associate and then post it. And then this is the advanced one. These were the ones that were linked from Academy. Like I mentioned before, but I do want to highlight it again. I do not recommend taking these until you're ready, just because every time you take this practice test, it's going to be the same questions. So if you take it first and you don't pass, and then you take it again right away and you pass, that doesn't mean that you actually built on your knowledge. It normally just means most people remember some of the questions or the answers, or they knew what they got wrong. So now they're trying the other one. Also, a lot of the other exam forms are actually what are called enemies of these questions. So if you see like an image of this is what studio looks like, here are the properties of this one, make sure you're really looking on the exam, because it may look like the exact same questions, but now the properties have changed. So that's where a lot of people get hung up. They think, oh, this is the same question as the practice test. None of the practice test questions are on the other exams. So make sure that you're reading, you're looking at the images, the properties, the actual workflows in Studio, and things like that. The next one is frequently asked questions. I do think this is helpful, but you can just do a Control F for what you kind of have questions about. So there's a lot around the legacy exams, around what it takes to get certified, the 2 current certifications we have. And I will go in next to kind of the future steps. The products that it covered, what's included. I think that this is very important to know. Tracy did mention that on the last exam, the legacy exam, there were actual workflows you had to build out in Studio and submit. That is not the case here. Pearson VUE wouldn't let us upload Studio on their lab simulation computers, so we couldn't do that. So instead, what it's going through is having multiple choice, and that's the highest amount, or actually 4 multiple choice answers that you choose from. Drag and drop. On the associate, there's maximum drag and drop 4 steps. On the advanced, it's 5 or 6. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult, meaning like in what order would you do this and how do you do it? And then simulation based, these are very small. I'd say there's less than 5 per exam maximum, but basically this is a way that you can interact with an image. So let's say there's properties, like for example, an input method. From the dropdown, you could actually select on the image, hardware events, simulate, send window message, things like that. So you do get to interact with some of the displays, but they are hard images that drop downs or type in text boxes are available to. But there is no lab based, so there's no actual working in Studio, which is why I mentioned that if you're also applying to jobs, make sure that you save some of the exercises you built as you were studying or practicing to kind of show as a portfolio or be able to talk about, because it is definitely great to be able to say, I built this, I'm also backed by this certification. There's the training options, the practice tests again, how to schedule, so through the different options if you want to do it. I did mention that we have it currently in English and Japanese. We do plan to localize. I believe the next one on the roadmap is Spanish, but don't quote me on that. Finally, there are the exam fees, how the taxes are, because it is US dollars, no matter what country you are based in, but the taxes may be different. The discounts, like I mentioned, we have the student vouchers, we have the GI Bill. We also have for bulk orders some discounts. The vouchers are basically just like coupon codes. So when you go to schedule it, it would be like 50% off. It's basically like a little coupon code you enter, and you can enter a few if you did have them from your employer. And then there are certain accommodations there. If you have accessibility needs, you do also receive the results. So you should receive the results on if you passed or not, and then you can get that badge and that certificate through CertMetrics. Like I said, there is that verification step that anybody can do if you give them that little code, or when you send them the PDF, that they can verify that this specific credential was issued to your first name, last name, and email. Then there is, like I said, they don't expire. There's a lot of information. I do think this is the one thing that I didn't cover that I think is important, is if you do fail, this does not apply to the practice test, obviously, only for the OnView or Pearson VUE testing centers. If you do fail, you cannot take it again for 2 weeks. If you fail a second time, you cannot take it again for a month. So do keep that in mind. We don't want people taking it right after again. We do want you to actually take in what the exam was, spend some time studying. I don't believe that they've ever made any exceptions for this, except for, like I said, when you try to reschedule, if there was some sort of technical issue, or Pearson VUE, when you went into the testing center, something happened, they will definitely not make you wait the 2 weeks. But this is, if you do get a failing score, it won't let you reschedule right away.
And it just for anybody that wants to know, it did take a good 2 or 3 days to have somebody contact me. It wasn't something, the technical issue, where it was resolved immediately. Even though I could finally get in and waited for the customer service, it was not an immediate resolution. But it wasn't 2 weeks for sure. I was able to reschedule immediately once they provided the code.
Yeah, I haven't heard of anyone having an issue on the in-person testing centers, but we have had people having technical difficulties with the OnView, just because they are monitoring you while you take the exam. So you have to have your camera open. I think they have some software that's running in the background to check that you're not on other websites. So that is something to definitely, if you have a deadline to take a certification for some reason, to know about this. It is definitely important. Other than that, like I said, there's just a bunch of different frequently asked questions. So if you have questions about Pearson VUE, we have a lot of it on here, but it also does go back to them and their frequently asked questions as well. Where there are testing centers across the US and LATAM, they're in every country that I know of, so you really don't have to worry about that. And then what kind of things are considered fraud? Like I mentioned, please don't ever post about this stuff. They will take away your credentials if they find that you're sharing. We do pay a company a lot of money to be doing web patrol for our exams. So the thing that happened with the legacy of people posting things is never up there on different sites. Even through paid things, people will offer to pay to take the exam for you. If we find out, you'll be basically banned from all UiPath things. So I don't recommend it, or even taking the exam on behalf of somebody else. But they will also check, for all these different things, if you took pictures, if you did something, Pearson VUE may even ban you in their testing centers. Different things in case that did happen. There are questions around it. And then, like I said, it's pretty obvious that it's a certification at UiPath.com if you have any questions, but you are definitely welcome to reach out to the different vendors as well for support. Lastly, I'm just going to post in 2 more URLs. These are blogs that people created, not internally at UiPath. They are part of the community who took it and give some advice on how to pass the certification exams. So this is their advice of how to go through the recommended training, where to start, how hard they thought it was. So I just wanted to share them in case you want to read through and see somebody else's offerings on how they would pass it. And then I do want to pull up really quick and double check that I had a few things I wanted to make sure that we covered. So we covered the method of delivery, the version between the old certification, how long to wait, technical issues. Like we said, wait for the support, don't pay again. You shouldn't ever have to pay again if something went wrong. Resources to prepare are the Trainings on Academy, the practice tests. You do get the credentials through Cert Metrics. We aren't updating the exams until next June, so don't worry about the current exams that are out there. We are planning to roll out new exams on different softwares and roles. So I actually don't know, they didn't finalize it, but we are planning on doing something around business analytics and definitely looking into process mining. The thing is, our process mining tool is changing, and same with the training, and that's kind of our limiting factor right now. The main difference between the associate and the advanced is advanced covers robotic enterprise framework and associate does not. So advanced, it's very important to know a lot about the RE framework. It goes a lot deeper into those concepts. I did mention the email for certification, that there's no expiration date on the current certifications. Right now, they are studio only. They do cover Orchestrator and robots a little bit, but it is mostly focused on studio. So you can get started learning Studio X, but make sure that when you're studying, you're going through a studio and understanding the properties and activities there. And then finally, right now, and until at least next June, they are not on the modern experience. This only really applies to UI automation activities, but anything that's been classic, when you go through Academy, they'll also tell you like, this is modern versus this isn't. But for the most part, I don't see like huge differences in the questions where you would get hung up if you did always learn on modern. Okay. Did I miss anything from the questions that we had posted in the, is it called Menti as well?
I am to see if I can see that. Yep, it'll let me see the results.
Hey, Christina, while Tracy's looking at that, I have a question for you. One of the things that I get a lot from clients is individuals that know Orchestrator. And so it sounds like what you said is that the exams don't cover Orchestrator, but is there any intent in the future to have either part of the existing or revamped certification, anything to cover Orchestrator?
Yeah, that is a great question. So let me open up the description document and see what is in the Orchestrator section. So for the associate, at least this is what it is, where for Orchestrator, it's around queues and assets and how to publish projects in Orchestrator. So if there's certain skills, they are covered, but in terms of like management and how to use tenants versus folders and things like that, there hasn't been. The main thing is just that a lot of our customers and clients and users, they're not doing all the same thing. So it's hard to do it. We also do have like huge in-depth people who look into, is it better to certify based on a product or on a role? And the main thing that they discovered was that it should be roles based. But then again, an RPA developer at one organization may be slightly different than the other. So it is like this minimally qualified candidate.
Right.
So making sure that everyone meets a bare threshold. I would definitely propose it. But what I was saying too is what we're trying to build out right now, it's only been a month in the planning, but we're already talking with vendors, is having these badges or credentials based around skills. And so you may be certified, but having the badge too of I'm an orchestrator expert or a specialist is what we're planning to call it as of right now, would be really, really useful. So maybe you're a process mining specialist. So I'm a developer, but I really also understand process mining or document understanding, and vice versa. Maybe you really understand it in terms of like healthcare or finance and IT or supply chain. These are the type of things that we're considering and trying to build out so that it's not just one huge exam that has to be around it. You can say, hey, I'm really good with Orchestrator and I'm an RPA developer.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yeah, that way then you'd have like specialists and individuals that could really focus on specific areas. So that'd be great.
Trying to build it out too so that it's, again, not getting so confusing outside of UiPath of all the different programs and diplomas and certificates you're getting. So.
Hey, Christina, this is Priya here. And the idea of the badges is like really cool. I think like that kind of goes back to this kind of gamification that you have on the forums.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good idea. I wonder, do you take like suggestions for the test or like even for the documentation itself?
Sorry, transactions for it? What was the word you said?
Oh, sorry. Do you take like suggestions on like how this is being done? Because like we have had like a couple of teams when they take like these practice tests right before their actual exam. One thing that they've come across is that like the questions that go around like the order or like the questions around queues and transactions, those are like scenario based, like saying like which one comes first, the deadline or the priority. So those type of questions at the end, like imagine the whole team gets it wrong and each one goes with one option and then they come back and try to discuss and they are never able to figure out what's the right answer. It would be really beneficial at the end of the practice test, instead of just saying like go learn queues, just explain like what is the right order, or even better would be to like update the documentation with like a couple of more examples Because right now it's all like theoretical.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. It is like that. I would definitely write anything if you do have suggestions, and this is open to anyone. So thank you, Priya, for bringing it up to the certification at uipath.com, especially if you have scenarios like that, if you could explain it out. And the sooner the better, because all of this is under review since the last one just launched. They're trying to review it all and trying to build out more certifications that come out in the next year and even more resources. So my side of the house that I can speak to is that we're trying to build out more examples so that it isn't as theoretical, or at least you can go through the examples and then see where the theoretical things that come up in the exam come from. But they are looking at even the different vendors. You did mention the drag and drop, and I do know that the platform that hosts the practice test is not the same platform Pearson VUE uses. So it's even a slightly different experience with the dragging and dropping. And then we do want to include, I do want to look at, Tracy, you posted, some people were seeing like, where can I do a study? In India, the community members do run like study sessions and things like that. I would love to do that in the US so that we could even say everybody who has to come has gone through the practice test. We can go through some of the questions. And you guys would have to host it because I'm definitely not allowed to say where it comes from or all those different answers because I'm on the team that created the questions. But I can definitely get some feedback by sitting in on it, and we can go through, this was the reference that of where the question was created. This is a scenario of what it applies to. Because in the back end, when we create the questions, they do go to a specific scenario that RPA developers across UiPath or our customers that are sitting in making the questions have encountered.
Any other last questions for Christina before we switch and go over some other opportunities for learning that are coming up that Tracy's going to cover?
Yeah, one last thing that I'd add again is regarding the certification, like when the questions are phrased, again, like they are like phrased to be difficult. Yes, I understand. But like, like you have to read it like at least 3 or 4 times to actually get what the question is. Because like there could be like a very slight change. And, like, especially if English is not your first language, then that makes it even more difficult because like sometimes when you read those questions, you feel like, okay, it's probably not written by like native speakers to begin with. So for them, like they wrote it as a translation. And when you read it, you have to translate it again in your brain and map the right question.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely true. In the comment section on the practice test too, those come to us. People think it's like a note section for yourself. So if you do have a comment on a certain question, and it's really good to notice that in the practice test, some questions are really in depth where it says, look at this image, this image, this image, and this image. And it's like, it's invoking a workflow file, then it's the workflow file, then it's the arguments panel. And those will take you much longer than the simple one-liners. So when you're in the actual exam, maybe flag those to come back to. Spend your time going through the ones that are a little bit easier to read and understand and don't involve multiple things going on, and then come back to them because all the questions are weighted the same.
Yeah, that's really something I've experienced as well, Christina, that you have these questions, and especially with catching errors. For example, you have a loop in there. You have a catch try, or what is it called? And
Try catch
and
it.
yeah, exactly. And then you have to check what the priority is. Like, does the loop keep, or does the try catch exit because of the mistake? So the priority of those activities is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I'm dropping off. It's quite late for me, unless anyone has a question for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas.
Okay, thanks for having me, and hope to see you again. Ciao.
All right, Tracy, do you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we'll talk about some upcoming events?
All right. So 2 major things that we wanted to make sure everybody is aware of. One, there is a hackathon going on right now. Anyone can join this. We'd love to see you participate in a team or participate in some way. it's pretty open, so you can do really anything that you want within reason. And you'd be surprised at how many groups actually finish the project. So you have a pretty good chance of making it in the hackathon. But we're always available as a team to help you guys, any of you that get stuck. But would always love to see people sign up for this and have other teammates join. And then secondarily, we have RPA Summer School coming up. So it's a little bit different than it's been done in the past. Last year, it was just Studio X. So this session, it's again like a 4-session cohort like it has been in the past where you learn the basics, but it will be not just Studio X, but Studio. I'll actually be participating in a couple of sessions for this, but it's always nice to go learn something as a group and to be able to have a live teacher-led session. So those are coming up in early August over the course of a couple of weeks, where you've got the 4 different sessions and can learn with a group. Any questions on any of those? All right. Well, we have 2 final questions before we wrap up. The first is, where do you live? If you guys will each vote on that, we'd love to know more about that for future in-person planning.
That one's me, so you can definitely refresh.
All right, we'll give it about 10 more seconds and then wrap up this question. All right, we'll close this one out. And then last question of the night. If you can attend in person, we'd like to know which general area or that you can't. And you should be able to vote multiple times if you're willing to travel to multiple locations.
If it's even, we can't narrow it down.
We knew this.
I think it's everybody just choosing to go wherever we may follow.
That's true.
Which is
You're right.
great.
They'll follow us anywhere.
We'll give this about 2 more seconds.
And sorry, while you guys wait, there was one question from Justin too, of what's the likelihood that a question that was not well written is rectified in this testing cycle? Very likely. If you have a specific one, I would report it to us still. But for every single question, we look at the metrics of how many people, honestly, even if like 100% of people get it correct, we have to change it. And if less than 60% of people get it correct, we change it. And then all of us review all of them. And even if I wrote it 3 years ago and it's garbage and I look at it now, I'm like, I don't know what I did. We all look at it and we rewrite it or try to clarify more, especially depending on the new products coming out. Sometimes we feel like it's not as clear and we rewrite it. It's a great question there.
All right. And then last but not least, we do have an event out or we're planning one on September 1st to talk about citizen development. So make sure that you mark your calendars for that. We will be doing it in the early evening, similar to this as well.
And registration will be open shortly, so keep an eye out for that.
All right. I believe we're all
Christina
done. That's the last slide.
Thank you guys for being our panelists, and Thomas was amazing and jumped in late to join us as well. So, or late in his day anyway. So thank you guys, and thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you on September 1st.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, all.